Welcome back to Fantasy Endgame, and welcome back NFL football. Week 1 is here, so you need to know who's going to be in your starting lineup for running backs. We're going to go game by game, break down all the matchups, tell you which running backs should be in your lineup and who should be on your bench for now. The great thing about Week 1, you have a lot of running backs you don't have to worry about, no buys, no injuries yet. So here are the must starts. If you drafted these running backs, just put them in there. Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, Kyren Williams, Travis Etienne, and Devon Achane. And while you're setting those lineups, don't forget to set your underdog line too for those pick'ems. NFL Week 1 picks are live, and right now, if you sign up for the very first time on Underdog Fantasy, make sure you use promo code ENDGAME because that gets you the new customer special for Week 1, Travis Kelce, going higher than half a yard. That's right, he gets 1 yard in Week 1, you win that pick, and you still have a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. Check out Underdog Fantasy and use promo code ENDGAME. The first game of Week 1, it's going to be a good one. We get the Ravens at the Chiefs on Thursday night. Now, the good news is if you have the starting running back for either of these teams, you know you're starting them. Should we have any interest in the backups? Let's start in Baltimore. Looks like it's going to be Justice Hill. Is he startable?
No. I mean, you have to be in a crazy, deep, I don't even know what kind of scoring setting league to consider Justice Hill in your lineup. Fine as a handcuff, but not as a starter in your fantasy lineup.
No, it would way deep to even consider him. I don't even know if he's rostered in a lot of 12-team leagues. I know there was some talk about him in the preseason getting, what did Harbaugh say, starters touches. Just forget all that. Justice Hill right now is still just a handcuff. And in Kansas City, there is a little bit of buzz here because behind Pacheco, it's not Deneric Prince. He was cut, and CEH, who knows his playing status, Carson Steele is going to be the RB2 in Kansas City. Is this going to be one of those out-of-nowhere sleepers that helps win your league?
Probably not. Again, you have to be in some ridiculously deep, insane league to even consider Carson Steele in your fantasy lineup in Week 1.
Yeah. Oh, look, last round stash. Sure, go for it. But let's see what happens if he even gets on the field in Week 1. All right, then we're going to be treated to a Friday game. That's right. Packers at Eagles should be another good one. Saquon Barkley is a must, of course. But what about Josh Jacobs, the new RB1 in Green Bay? You probably drafted him as a starter. Does that mean he's an auto start this week?
I think he pretty much is. Like, borderline must start this week. A.J. Dillon on season-ending IR. Marshawn Lloyd, we don't even know if he's going to be healthy for Week 1. It isn't the best matchup, of course. Eagles, good defense, good run defense. But at the same time, Josh Jacobs should be a workhorse in this game. I think you got to roll with him.
I agree. And it's funny because I was worried about Jacobs in terms of staying healthy. Looks like he's the only healthy guy out there in that backfield. He's going to get all the touches pretty much. I think you've got to start him. Now, they do have an RB2, and they probably will give some touches to Emmanuel Wilson, but is he even on the radar?
No, again, this is fine if you want to stash him as a backup. I mean, I don't even know. Marshawn Lloyd might eventually be the backup whenever he's healthy, but no, don't start Emmanuel Wilson, please.
No, I don't think he's even worth considering. Now to the Sunday slate. Let's start with the Panthers at the Saints. Looks like the leading running back right now for Carolina is Chuba Hubbard. Is Chuba Hubbard going to have enough juice in fantasy to be startable?
Barely, because again, it's not a great matchup against the Saints run defense. Chuba Hubbard, even last year as a starter, was just kind of okay. So I don't think he's a guy you have to start this week, but if you need like a deep flex or maybe you need an RB3, maybe your league starts a lot of running backs, I think he's doable, startable if you need him, but pretty much it.
Yeah, I know we're optimistic about this Carolina offense this year, new coaching staff, but I need to see it first. Road game, decent, not a great defense, but still. Do I really know that Carolina is going to be able to establish the run? I would rather bench Chuba Hubbard for now. And then Miles Sanders, remember him? He's still around, but is he even going to be a factor? How much are we going to see him on the field?
Well, if preseason was any indication, not much, because in that last preseason game with the starters, he only got 2 snaps out of 12. There is no way I'm starting Miles Sanders.
No way I'm rostering Miles Sanders. Even in best ball, I don't think I have a single share. I think we can move on, because as soon as Jonathan Brooks comes back, the Panthers will forget about him. And then Alvin Kamara, used to be a no-doubter. I don't think we can say that anymore, but how strongly do you feel about him in this matchup?
You got to feel very strongly about him this week. The Panthers defense, not a scary run defense by any stretch. Kendre Miller on IR. He should get the bulk of the touches here. I'm sure he'll probably get vultured by Taysom Hill at some point, but he's going to get receiving work. He should be at least somewhat efficient in this game. I think if you got Kamara, you're rolling with him.
Yeah, you just said the magic word that I worry about with Kamara all year really is he's going to get vultured near the goal line sometimes, but he's got that floor. He will catch passes. The Saints offense doesn't have a lot of receiving threats, so I think as a floor play, low-end RB2, he's fine. And then, speaking of vultures, Jamal Williams, could he play that role? Could he have maybe some upside for a standard league or something?
Maybe in a standard league or a touchdown-only league, and you hope he falls into the end zone, but that's really it. I'm not starting Jamal Williams.
No, it doesn't look like the same guy from years ago. Jamal Williams doesn't really even need to be rostered in most fantasy leagues. Next up, we got the Vikings at the Giants. Whole new backfield for these teams. Let's start in Minnesota. Aaron Jones might have to carry the load there depending on that quarterback situation, how it shakes out. So how do you feel about him against this Giants defense?
You got to feel good. I mean, I'm not too worried about Ty Chandler. I'm not worried about the Giants defense at all. He actually still looked like he had some juice last year. So I think Aaron Jones, you got him, you start him.
I feel great about him in this matchup. Not worried about the Giants defense, Giants offense, Giants anything. Yeah, Aaron Jones right now, preseason, fully intact and healthy. I'm starting him for sure. And you said you're not worried about Ty Chandler. Assume that means you don't have any thoughts of maybe starting him anywhere.
No, I will say, like we've talked about some guys, Justice Hill, Carson Steele, like that. I would start him over those guys, but that's pretty much about it. I'm not starting Ty Chandler.
Right. Still just a stash and a handcuff for now. And the replacement for Saquon in New York is Devin Singletary. Is he at least going to get enough volume to be viable?
I honestly view him exactly how I view Chuba Hubbard. It's not a bad matchup against this Vikings defense. He's probably going to be the lead back in a very bad offense. Like floor play if you're really desperate. So he's startable, but I don't love it.
I think I probably like him better than Chuba Hubbard because the RB2 situation behind him is very unsettled still. The passing offense led by Daniel Jones is very unsettled. So I think Singletary gets a lot of touches in this game. I'm not scared of the Vikings defense. So I think he's a low-end RB2 that you could start. Not my favorite, but he's not a bad choice. All right, now let's talk about New England facing Cincinnati in the jungle. Start with Ramondre Stevenson, still to do everything back for the Patriots. Do you have confidence with him under this new regime?
Well, I don't know if I have confidence in the new regime, and I certainly don't have confidence in the offensive line, but I have confidence in Ramondre Stevenson this week because I have very little confidence in this Bengals run defense. I know he's going to catch plenty of passes in this game. Maybe he doesn't have a huge ceiling because will he find the end zone or not? I don't know, but I still think Ramondre is going to have a very high floor in this game. So I think if you have Ramondre, you should feel confident starting him.
Right. The great thing about Mondre is that he's definitely going to be the workhorse there. He's probably going to catch a ton of passes just out of necessity, but the floor is high. I think rushing wise also because he's going to get fed. They do not want to have to sit back and pass the ball with Drake May or Jacoby Brissett or whoever if they don't have to. And so while, like you said, it's not a super high ceiling, right now an underdog, if you look at his pick, it's 56.5 yards rushing. He can easily get that. So right now I'm taking that pick. And again, if you're new to underdog, you combine that with the new special for customers and get Travis Kelce just getting 1 yard. I mean, that's an easy duo there where you can win instantly. Just make sure, again, if you are new to Underdog, you sign up, use promo code ENDGAME. That gets you that special pick plus deposit match. Again, 50% deposit match up to $1,000 for your first deposit. Now, the Pats do have Antonio Gibson. You think he might carve out enough of a role here against that inferior run defense?
I mean, he's going to have a role. He's probably going to catch some passes. But again, one of these guys, you should not need to put Antonio Gibson in your lineup week one. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, Gibson feels like one of those guys. I'm just not falling for it ever again. And being in this offense makes me even more out on him. Now, it'll be very interesting to see what the Bengals do with that backfield, maybe 50-50 split. So let's talk about Zach Moss first and foremost. I think he's the technical starter. Is he starting in any of your fantasy teams?
Not if I don't have to. One thing about this Patriots team is they actually are a good run defense, and I'm not confident in how many touches Zach Moss is going to get. I do think he'll be the lead back, but I don't know if he's going to have enough touches here for me, and it's not a great matchup. I'm going to sit Zach Moss if I can this week.
Well, here's the weird thing is that the fact that the Patriots are really no good, I don't expect them to be good at all. If you hadn't noticed, makes me a little bit down on the Bengals. I don't think they're really going to be able to light up the scoreboard. This is just going to be probably a low-scoring game in general. So I think Moss is fine as like a floor play, but I want more upside than that in week 1. And then, of course, there's the fact that he's also competing with Chase Brown, who does have more explosiveness. I'm a little more interested in him, but I also feel like I don't want to have to start him right now. He really should be your RB3 anyways, right?
Yeah, or worse. I mean, yeah, if I'm not starting Zach Moss, I'm definitely not starting Chase Brown this week.
All right, then we waste no time with a revenge game. Steelers at Falcons, a.k.a. the Arthur Smith Bowl. So, how will he deploy Najee Harris in his first game as the Steelers offensive coordinator?
Probably very frustratingly. I can see Najee Harris getting like the bulk of the carries, actually performing pretty well in this zone blocking scheme, and then getting vultured by, Cordero Patterson or whoever at the goal line. But I think Najee will at least be solid. Not my favorite start this week, but not my least favorite. So if you need him, go ahead and roll him out.
Well, I had more interest in Najee when I thought Jalen Warren was going to be completely out. Apparently he's going to play, but before we talk about him, let's just say I'm still very skeptical of Najee in general for the obvious reason. I don't know that I feel like they'll compete with the Falcons in a road game here. I would really rather sit Najee. I'd rather play a guy like Devin Singletary over him. Now, what about Jalen Warren? We all thought he was going to be out at least 1, maybe 2 weeks regular season. Apparently he's playing, though you should probably be concerned.
You should be concerned not only because of that, but like I just said, I think Najee actually fits Arthur Smith's run scheme better than Jalen Warren. I mean, yeah, he'll catch some passes. He'll probably have a run or two where everybody's like, oh my gosh, Jalen Warren is so much more explosive. Give him the ball more. But at the end of the day, he probably won't score enough fantasy points for your fantasy lineup. I'm not starting him.
Yeah, Warren to me is always one of those players that everyone expects to do more. He never really does, at least not for fantasy. Now, I want to avoid this committee if I can. And then this year, will Tyler Algier have standalone value besides Bijan? Obviously, you're starting Bijan, but can you also start Algier?
Maybe. I mean, there's some rumblings that he might get like significant touches, but I'm not banking on that in week 1. I'm not starting Algier.
No, you really shouldn't need to, and I don't think his value is going to be nearly what it was last year. This team's going to pass more. Bijan is going to be deployed fully. I really hope. So, no to Algier. Another division rivalry, Texans at the Colts, should be a good one. Only 2 running backs really to talk about here. If you got JT, you're starting him. But what about Joe Mixon?
Yeah, I think Joe Mixon, if you drafted him, you're probably starting him. Colts defense is going to be very good this year, so it may not be Joe Mixon's best game, but I think if you've got Joe Mixon, unless you're just stacked at running back, you're probably starting him.
Well, I'm not drafting a lot of Joe Mixon, but if I am, yeah, I'm treating him as my RB2 because that's where you had to take him. There's really no reason to avoid him this week, so if you got Mixon, then start him. All right, now time for Arizona at Buffalo. We'll start with James Conner, still the starter there. Is he starting for your fantasy teams?
Definitely. I know you see Bills, you think, oh, good defense, but this is not the same Bills defense. I mean, they're not going to be the worst, but they're not going to be elite anymore. James Conner going to be a workhorse. I think if you got Conner, you're starting Conner.
Yeah, I mean, the only concern might be if Buffalo just lights it up on offense and, game script goes against Arizona being able to run. I'm not too worried about that. Connor's still going to get so many touches. He'll still catch some passes, touchdown upside. I think Connor should be a strong start. And then there's Trey Benson, the rookie. I mean, usually rookies get played slowly into things. Is that how you're feeling it's going to work here in Arizona?
Definitely not starting Trey Benson in week 1.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on to him, but don't start him yet. And then in Buffalo, you got James Cook, drafted pretty early in a lot of leagues. Does that make him a borderline must start?
Yes, it's a great matchup. I mean, this Cardinals defense might be better than it was last year, but it's still not going to be very good. He's going to be the lead back here. It's still going to be a good Buffalo offense. You got to start James Cook.
Agree. I have high hopes for Cook this season. Not worried for any reason in this matchup. Strong start. And then his backup, Ray Davis, drawn some really rave reviews in the preseason, but is that enough to make him fantasy viable already?
No, again, a rookie running back, week 1, not trusting him, no.
No, me either. No reason to roll out a guy like Davis just yet. All right, next up is the Titans at the Bears. Let's talk about another committee. Looks like Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears might be a timeshare here. How do you feel first about Pollard?
I feel a little bit better about Pollard than Spears. It looks like he's the 1A in this backfield, but Bears defense is going to be really good this year. I worry the touches aren't going to be there for him, so I can't put him in that like go ahead and start him category, but if you need him this week, I think he's fine.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous as well. I agree with everything you said. Pollard is probably going to be the leader in touches here, but I just don't want to have to start him because I don't feel a high ceiling. I think he almost has to either catch a lot of passes or break off a big run. I don't want to depend on that just yet. So I'm benching Pollard if I can afford to. And as far as Tyjae Spears, obviously I can't say much better about him. I like Spears, but I don't like the idea of starting him.
Exactly. If I'm not super high on Pollard, I can't be that high on Spears. I'm benching Spears.
And could the Bears deploy a three-headed monster at running back? We'll see. Let's start with DeAndre Swift. Going to be the starter, but is he going to get enough touches that you definitely feel like you should start him?
This is the big unknown of this backfield. I don't feel strongly either way here. I mean, again, I can only put Swift in the if you absolutely need him category because I'm not sure how this backfield is going to shake out.
Yeah, he's definitely got upside. I'm not too concerned about the other two backs in Chicago, but I don't feel like you have to start him. He's more, again, kind of like that low-end RB2 type. And then Khalil Herbert, still there as a Bear, made the cut. Any interest in him?
I mean, I barely feel good about Swift. I can't feel good about Herbert, no.
Yeah. Exactly. It will be interesting to see if he even gets on the field much. And then Rashawn Johnson, some people kind of high on. He didn't really do a lot to stand out this preseason either. Any chance?
No. If I'm not doing Herbert and I'm barely doing Swift, no to Johnson.
Agreed. All right, now the Battle of Florida. We got Jacksonville at Miami. You know Travis Etienne is still in that must-start category, but Tank Bigsby seems to be getting more involved. Is he going to get enough touches to make him fantasy relevant?
Probably not. Will he get more touches than last year? Almost certainly. Will it be enough for your fantasy team in week 1? Almost certainly not. I'm not starting Tank Bigsby.
Nope. Again, one of those strong stashes, handcuffs, but that's it. Now, we did say Devonta Achane is a must-start. Almost feels like a slap in the face to Raheem Mostert, who happened to lead the league in rushing touchdowns last year. Look, does he still have enough to make him a fantasy starter?
Definitely. I mean, you know what you're getting here with Raheem Mostert. If he doesn't score any touchdowns, you're probably going to be like, oh man, why did I start Raheem Mostert? But if he scores 2 touchdowns and you don't start him, you're going to be kicking yourself. It's not a terrible matchup. I think if you got Mostert, unless you already have 2 better running backs, you can start him.
Yeah, I feel he's been disrespected during draft season. I mean, there's no guarantee that Achane gets more touches than Mostert. I think Mostert still has to be considered a very good RB2. And then they have another talented running back, Jalen Wright, but he's a rookie and he's the third on the team. We can't start Jalen Wright, can we?
No, I think 2 Dolphin running backs are enough. I'm not starting Jalen Wright.
Broncos at Seahawks. Let's talk Javonte Williams. I know you're high on him in the preseason. Are you high enough that you're going to say you got to start him in week 1?
I'm not going to say you have to start him in week 1 because, again, you should have drafted Javonte Williams hopefully not as your RB2. But if you did and he is your best number 2 running back, I feel fine about him this week. So if you need to fire him up, he should be good.
Well, I don't think he's going up against a fearsome defense, but road game in Seattle, not a great venue. And again, I've been super high on Seattle's offense this year and super low on Denver's. I'm worried about the game script here, but I will say you can start Javonte as long as you have realistic expectations. And then there's Jaleel McLaughlin. Looks like he is the RB2 now in Denver with Samaje Perine getting cut. Is McLaughlin going to have a big enough role?
Probably not. I mean, we're getting back into like very desperate territory here, not starting McLaughlin.
No, definitely not starting McLaughlin at all. Now on the other side, we got Kenneth Walker. We've been talking him up as well this preseason. How strongly do you feel about it?
I feel pretty strong about him. I will say I think the Broncos defense is going to be much better this year than it was last year. I mean, last year, remember, the Broncos were one of the worst run defenses like historically that we've ever seen. But I still think Kenneth Walker is the workhorse. I think he's going to catch more passes than we think. So if you got Kenneth Walker, start him.
Yeah, I think he's as close to a must start for me out of anybody on this list as we have, because I feel like this Seattle team is just going to roll Denver. So if I have him, I'm putting him in. It's been a quiet offseason for Zach Charbonnet. Should he be quietly sitting on your bench?
Yes, I think he's still a great handcuff to have on your bench, but not in your starting lineup.
Right. I think at this point his only value is if Walker does get hurt, but he's not yet. Raiders at Chargers. Is it going to be all Zamir White in this game?
I think it will be. I mean, Chargers not scaring me on defense at all against Zamir White. I think Zamir White's going to get a ton of touches. I'm not worried about the Chargers offense, lighting up the Raiders or anything. So, yeah, if you got Zamir White, start him.
Agree. Very strong start. I understand he doesn't have the high ceiling in a PPR league. He doesn't catch a ton of passes, whatever. If I have Zamir White, I want to fire him up and see what he can do. And then it'll be curious to see what the Chargers do in this backfield. We feel like Gus the Bus is going to lead the way, but how strong of a start is Gus Edwards, especially if you're talking about a PPR league?
Well, not as strong of a start in a PPR league, but I still think he has plenty of touchdown upside against this Raiders defense this week. So, again, you shouldn't need Gus Edwards this week. I mean, he was drafted probably as your RB3, RB4, but if for some reason you do, I think he'll be a fine start.
Yeah, actually, I don't have Gus too far lower than Zamir White. He's going to get touches. Like you said, a lot of touchdown upside. I think he could be a strong RB2 if you waited on RB2. Then, welcome back, J.K. Dobbins. Are we going to see him dazzle? Or are we going to see more of the same, which is just injury after injury?
Well, let's hope no more injuries. But the problem is this guy has had 2 devastating injuries in the span of like 2.5, 3 years. I'm not doing it with J.K. Dobbins. Look, maybe he'll prove me wrong. I hope he does, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah, let's not buy into the preseason hype. Look, you want to stash him and see what happens. That's okay, but do not start him right now. The Cowboys will be taking on the Browns in Cleveland. Well, we don't know what the Dallas backfield exactly is going to look like. We know Rico Dowdle is going to be a part of it. Do you think that he kind of pulls away as the lead back here?
He might, but I don't think it matters this week. I mean, we're talking about potentially the best defense in the NFL and a guy who might be, losing some touches to Zeke. Maybe Dalvin Cook at some point. We don't know. I can't start Rico Dowdle this week.
No, we definitely have to wait and see what happens here. I mean, Rico showed in flashes, but we can't trust him in fantasy. Not right now. And then I think it's safe to say we're not going to love on Zeke too much. Is there a universe where you're starting Zeke Elliott week 1 in fantasy?
Again, if you're in a touchdown-only league and you're just desperately hoping he trips over the goal line and scores, sure. Other than that, no.
Yeah, even then, you could probably find better touchdown-dependent running backs somewhere else. So it's a hard no to Zeke. And I have a feeling it might be a yes on a guy you've been talking up, Jerome Ford, who might have the backfield all to himself. Can he do it against this Dallas defense?
Yeah, let's see Jerome Ford this week. No Nick Chubb, no Nyheim Hines, no Deontay Foreman, who was cut. Pierre Strong Jr., the only other running back on the roster, and the Cowboys defense, for as good as it is terrible against the run. Yeah, I'm starting Jerome Ford if I got him.
I think Jerome Ford is almost a must start. All those reasons you mentioned. And look, Dallas defense might not be what it was last year with Dan Quinn gone and Deron Bland, their top corner, is hurt. So don't be surprised if Ford eats. But now that he's the RB2 there in Cleveland, does Pierre Strong Jr. have any value?
I mean, he probably has some value because it's not like Jerome Ford's going to play every snap and get every touch, but not enough value to start him.
No, I definitely don't think so. And I honestly don't think he needs to be owned anywhere because if something happens to Ford, they'll probably just go add a different running back. Next, we have the Commanders at the Buccaneers. Let's talk Brian Robinson Jr. Looks like the lead back here. Where does he rank for you as far as running backs?
I would say pretty good. I mean, you say Bucs, tough run defense, but they weren't that good last year against the run. Not like we saw in the past where they were an absolute shutdown run defense. I think there will be chances for him here. I don't know if he has the highest ceiling, but I think he has an okay floor, so he's startable if you need him.
I think he's definitely startable. Don't love him this week, but he's always going to be kind of right there in the cusp, right, between RB2, RB3 type and a 12-man league. So he's startable depending on what your roster looks like. What about Austin Eckler? Are we going to see a revival, or is he just going to be relegated to sporadic usage?
I think, sadly, the latter. I mean, look, maybe he'll come back to life this week, but do you really want to trust it in your fantasy lineup in week 1 already? Sit Austin Eckler this week.
Yeah, I think we definitely have to sit him because all you're hoping for is a few screen passes. That's all you're getting. That's not going to help you win. All right, now we got Rachaad White in a home game here against Washington. good enough spot that you're starting him, no questions asked?
Yeah, I mean, are we scared of this Washington defense? I'm not. I still think he's going to get the majority of the touches. He's going to catch a ton of passes. You got Rachaad White, you start him.
Yeah, he has to be a strong start. I know we've heard a lot of noise about the rookie, Bucky Irving, looking good, fitting this new scheme, but he's still a rookie running back, wasn't drafted super early. It's going to be all Rachaad White for now. So, strong start. And Bucky Irving, I mean, maybe it'll happen for him at some point, but you cannot consider him in week 1.
No, yeah, it might happen at some point, but probably not week 1.
And then the Sunday slate ends with a rematch for the playoff game, the Rams at the Lions. So you know that if you have Kyren Williams, you should still be good. Is Blake Corum going to see action right away to make him fantasy relevant?
He'll probably see action right away, but I don't think it'll be enough to make him fantasy relevant, not starting Blake Corum.
No. I mean, this kind of just follows along with what we've said for all these rookie running backs. None of them really should have much value the first week of the season. And then the Detroit side, yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs, you don't have to sweat him. But what does that mean for Monty? Is David Montgomery now someone who's more of a bench running back, or do you still think he's got enough value?
I think he has enough value. We know he's always got a chance to score a touchdown. He's going to be involved. He doesn't have that pass catching, so in your PPR leagues, he's going to be more volatile, right? If he doesn't score, you're probably going to wish you hadn't started him, but it's not a scary matchup against the Rams. I think for the most part, if you have David Montgomery, you're probably starting him.
Yeah, he's kind of a tricky one. Like you said, it really depends on how this game goes for Detroit, but look, they're at home. They score lots. I think Monty still has enough upside. He should be a pretty strong RB2. And then Monday night, we got the Jets at the 49ers. New York definitely hoping it's not a repeat of last year's season opener. So, you know you got Breece Hall, you got Christian McCaffrey, you are happy. But do the backups have value? Looks like the backup to CMC is Jordan Mason.
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell, season-ending IR, so Jordan Mason will be the backup to handcuff to Christian McCaffrey. If you watched our 10 Secrets video, you already knew that, though. So, a high upside handcuff, but not start-worthy in week 1.
No, I mean, honestly, without an injury, none of the 49ers running backs, whoever it is, should have value, but definitely someone to keep on your bench. Does the same go for Braylon Allen? I'm going to assume it does.
Yeah, high-end handcuff only, not startable.
There you go. With the NFL season just getting started, it can be really hard picking between all the players you drafted. You don't know who to start or sit at any position. That's why we do this. We got you covered. So check out our entire Week 1 playlist for all the best advice.